Hey, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Kenny Braswell here with you once again on a Wednesday evening to continue our series on co-parenting under crisis. And so it is a joy to be here with you tonight. Before I get started, I'll ask, how you doing? What's going on? How's your day? How's your week under this health crisis? I'm going to wait a few minutes for a couple of people to get on. Barbara, always supporting. I love you so much. Thank you so much. And others who will join in just a second. So as I kind of, man, people don't know how much it takes to like set this stuff up. You got to be your own, like you literally got to be your own producer and music person. You gotta do it all yourself. So you ain't nobody up here but me, just trying to make this happen. And then last week I was having trouble with this thing actually showing the screen that I was trying to show, and I'm actually seeing it's giving me the same trouble again. And so, but I'm trying to fix this thing before I send it to you, live. Not exactly sure why it's doing what it's doing, but I got a backup. I got a backup today, and so we ain't gonna have this issue again today. We gonna got a quick backup that's gonna help us, get to this thing. So. There you go. So again, how you guys doing out there? We're gonna do it this way today. It's gonna take me a little bit away from the flow of how I wanted to present it, but I can get through it. I think I'm good enough to make this happen. Anyway, here we are on a Wednesday evening, and we're here because some weeks ago we began to get a lot of phone calls from individuals that was struggling in co-parenting, right? And struggling with getting the mom, in many cases, to understand the importance of allowing dad to see their children, but learned that it's not just moms, it's also not just moms, it's dads as well who are struggling with child exchange as it relates to this health crisis, and trying to make sure that you're safe, and trying to make sure that the children are safe, and trying to make sure that each of you are able to contribute to your children's lives in the way that you desire to do so. And so all of that stuff is understandable. And so what we're trying to do is like really make sure that people are equipped to understand the importance of parenting under crisis, to be able to deal with the things that they have not dealt with in their lives, to be able to move forward, to be able to understand. And so we created this three-part series called Co-Parenting Under Crisis. And so if you want to see the first two, feel free to go to www.gentlewarriorsacademy.com. There you will find both of the last 2 weeks. And this is the last of this particular series. And this one is going to talk about winning in co-parenting, right? Planning to win and doing the things that you need to do with respect to parenting at this time. And so if you're out there and you're listening and you know people that are struggling in parenting, just kind of in the comments, yeah, I know some people. Or if you're struggling yourself, just let me know, you're struggling out there a little bit with this parenting, particularly with the children being at home. So, which is always a challenge, right? And so we got something coming up for all of you as well who are home dealing with children and dealing with your significant others who also may be driving you up a wall, just a little something, something, right? And so we're going to talk about that as well. But just so you know a little bit about me, if you have not seen the first two, I've been doing this work, particularly around responsible fatherhood for the last 16 years now, in community service for 31 years. So I know a little something about serving people. I know a little something about helping people get through their issues and get through some of the things that they are challenged with, right? And so this work is part of my calling and part of, what I get up each and every morning to advance in my life. And in addition to that, being a father, right? Being a grandfather, being a husband, right? And trying to do all of this work and helping people, right? I heard this saying sometime before about, the shoemaker's kids having holes in their shoes. And so I'm always trying to battle against the work that I do to help others in these spaces and the responsibility that I have in my own home, making sure that I show up for my family, show up for my inner family, and show up for my immediate family, show up for my friends, and so forth. And so this work is hitting close to home. I hope that all of you are safe and being safe. My heart, our prayers, and our condolences go out there to those of you who have had loved ones victimized by COVID-19. This has not been the best time to lose loved ones. There's never a best time, but certainly under these circumstances where people aren't able to grieve the way they want to grieve, they're not able to celebrate their loved ones in the way that they would like to celebrate their loved ones. And so our heart goes out to those who have had to have their loved ones buried and not go through the traditional and customary rituals that we go through to send our loved ones home to glory, as the old saints would say. And so it's critical that we're able to be able to serve you, to be able to do what we do on any given night or any given day in this space, to be able to really serve you in a way that allows you to be able to be the best parent you can be in this space. And so trying to get this just right in this screen. Just right in the screen. There we go. Come back here. Get back here. There we go. Just right in the screen. So let's take a recap. Let's go through a recap of what we learned in the last 2 weeks. I'm so glad I finally got this thing working. Oh my goodness. I'm glad. So last week we talked about, or the first week we talked about fairly assessing the situation, right, that you're in as a co-parent with the other parent. And that is like really taking time to look at where you are, look at this moment of emergency that we're in. Be able to put yourself in the other person's shoes and to be mindful of what they're thinking and what they're feeling and what their desire may be. take a little bit off of yourself, just to be able to listen and understand that. To also think about what's the goal, right? And so when you approach the co-parent, we know that the ultimate goal is that you want to be with your children. But ultimately, what is the goal? Because this too shall pass, this too shall get by. And we want to make sure that we are strengthening families, not destroying families out there in our zeal to ensure that, we are present, there and present for our children. Make sure that we're clear about what we're asking for in terms of, seeing the children, being flexible on both sides, right? Because we understand the need to want to be safe and keep our children safe. But there are ways we communicate in very different ways and various ways today that we've never been able to communicate before. There are ways to engage and interact with our children. And so it's important to kind of understand that you really define what you're asking for and then negotiate the plan, right? Because you do have to kind of walk away and kind of think about, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. These are the rules that we're going to do it by. And you make sure that you put all those things in place so everybody's clear exactly what's going to take place. And then again, just like fairly assessing the situation, and that is recognizing the moment. Now, this is a very different moment. There's a lot of things going on out there now. I talked a little bit about them last week as it relates to non-custodial parents. There is some unfortunate things that are taking place specifically with non-custodial parents, primarily dads, as it relates to the stimulus payments. Those who don't know are now finding out that if you have child support arrears, you may or may not receive your check or some reduced amount of your check if it doesn't equal up to the $2,500. And so that's not good across the board for fathers who have been laid off, moms who have been laid off, individuals who don't have savings, right? And so we understand the kids got to get taken care of. We get it. We're not disputing that dads still have to be and moms have to be responsible financially for their children. We're just talking about understanding and recognizing the moment that we're in right now. Everyone is trying to survive literally, right? We're trying to survive. And so there needs to be some understanding as it relates to those things. The second thing that we learned yesterday, I just learned this, is for those of you, and I haven't gotten confirmation, but it sounds right because this is the way it's always been with these agencies, that those dads and moms who pay child support and have child support arrears will also lose their money within their unemployment checks. And so that's not good. And so there's some things we got to deal with, and we got to be able to be together at now more than any other time in our lives. We have to find a way to get through this together. We can't destroy ourselves in the midst of this invisible enemy that we can't see, and it's taking us out. You see the reports that are happening now as it relates specifically to African Americans in this country. This virus is impacting us much more than other cohorts in some cities dramatically, right? Chicago, 70% of the deaths from COVID-19 are African American. Louisiana, the numbers are high. Detroit, the numbers are high. New York, I still have not seen percentages on New York, but there are other cities where these numbers are high around the country. And we have to begin to start thinking about what is contributing to those things, right? It's not all about the color of our skin, because COVID-19 is no respecter of race, skin, or economic stature in your life. It is a matter of vulnerability. It is a matter of what you connect yourselves to. It matters the environment you're in. It matters your economic situation, right? And so we don't stop to not recognize that some of y'all gotta go to work, right? Our health workers, God bless them. Our first responders, God bless them. There's some of you you gotta go to work. You gotta make that money. You gotta pay the rent. You gotta pay the daycare. You gotta keep the lights on. You gotta keep your phone. You gotta put gas in your car. We get that. And so that's why it's so important that we figure out how to do this together. and not be at each other's throats as it relates to our kids and using our kids as mechanisms to heal old wounds. I would say that. And so last week we talked about the process of making a good decision. We talked about having patience. We talked about having belief and faith in this time and believing in something and believing that this thing will pass by and that we'll get on the other side of this. There have been plagues in this world long before this one. And somehow the world has still survived, right? We have still found ourselves here. And then thinking of a master plan. Ain't nothing but something inside my hand. And you know what? Eric B dropped it on us. So make sure that we're not only thinking about ourselves as individuals, but we're thinking about ourselves as families, and we're thinking about ourselves as communities, and we're trying to do the things that will elevate us so that when we come out on the other side of this, we're stronger, not weaker. We're more together, not more separated. And so that takes some work. And so not only within the four walls of your home, but even as you express yourself over social media, some of the things I see people saying in the, oh man, let me just go to the next screen. I'll leave it there. But what we're going to talk about tonight, I got 45 minutes with you. I will be out of your space by 8 o'clock. We're going to be talking about planning to win in co-parenting. I think it's important, and I got some tools that I want to give to you tonight that's going to help you win in co-parenting. We find ourselves here, right? We find ourselves here. You've seen this over the last 2 weeks, as I have described, those of us who are at the crossroads, trying to make decisions on whether or not we're going to go left or right, to figure out which are the best decisions to make for us and our families, to retrack when we've gone down the wrong road and now have to admit to ourselves that we were wrong and try to readjust and go down a better road, right? We've been standing here stuck, petrified, fearful of making a decision on which road we're going to go down because we don't want to make a mistake and we don't want to go down the wrong road. And so we sit here at this fork and we paralyze ourselves and we don't step forward to walk into our destiny, right? Walk into the unknown, walk into the ability to be able to see your best self manifest itself, whether or not it's as a parent or as a business person or as a spouse. We want to make sure, that as you're standing here, that you have the ability to make a great decision, that you can make a decision. Sometimes you're not going to make a great decision, but it's important that you make a decision, that you do something. It's nothing more frustrating to me than those who sit on the fence, right? Those who won't make a stand for anything, right? They won't support anything. They just kind of sit there and watch what everyone else is doing. And then there's some of you who just follow people. You not even your sheep being led to slaughter. And so not being intelligent about what you're following, some of that is being shown as I watch people post things that are clearly untrue. They're just untrue. No fact checking whatsoever. Just posting stuff. And it's not an excuse to say, that's not mine. I took it from somebody else's page, or I cut and pasted it. I was just moving it forward. I'm just moving information. I don't know if it's true. You have a responsibility for what you put out there, right? Right or wrong. If you don't know whether it's right or wrong, don't put it out there. Don't flip it out there. Right? And be as positive as you possibly can in this time. And so I think there's a need for both seriousness and leisure in this space. I think that this is part of what we need to do to continue this plan. Because one of the things we know is a goal without a plan is just a wish, right? And so we can't think about where we want to go and what we want to do and how we want to get there without crafting a plan. And so if you are a parent and you're struggling in the space of trying to figure out um, how to negotiate a circumstance where you can see your kids or be with your kids, listen, there's some people, healthcare workers, I've seen these folks online as well, healthcare workers that are staying in other parts of the house, right? Because they know that they are exposing themselves to COVID-19 when they go to work. And so they're sleeping in basements and they're sleeping in RVs, they're sleeping in the car, they're sleeping in the attic, they're sleeping in a tent in the back of the house, right? They're sleeping in a hotel room. They're finding a way to do good and to make sure that their family is well at the same time. They're planning. They're just not knee jerk reacting to what it is we see out there, right? And so it's important to plan. And then there was this. I said this to myself. I think I posted this some 8 years ago, right? Joy, joy resides in a small room of your life where only a few people will come to celebrate with you. The rest are waiting for you to fail, right? And so don't be weary about doing what you think is right, doing what you know is right in this situation. And so, and don't do it and expect that people are going to be clapping their hands in the loudest of applause for the work that you do, right? Took me a long time to realize, get over that, Kenny. Most people are going to watch you and never say anything until they see you, right? Most people are going to support you in spirit, but never in action. And those are okay. Those folks have to answer for what they contribute to humanity, right? And so, but it's not up to you to get upset when you're not getting accolades and when you're not being affirmed. And so we just have to be very mindful, about that as we continue to do this work and continue to struggle with COVID-19. And so what we do know, and this is something that you have to understand, right? You must understand this. Planning is a process, not an action. Let that soak in for a second. Planning is a process, not an action, right? And so it is the process through which you do what you do, not just the action. They say the journey of 1,000 steps begins with the first step. And so you have to live and you have to be a co-parent step by step by step. So even if your goal is to see your children, to be with your children, it still is a process, particularly if you have unresolved issues, personal issues that you have not resolved. And so emotions just don't go away. And unfortunately, we are humans, right? We are human in the way that we respond to life. We're human in the way that we respond to others. And so it's important to know that. It's extremely important to know that we are emotional beings. And so as a result of that, there is a process we have to go through in order to reach our goal. And then, right? And so then there's a lot of complications that we have to deal with as it relates to being parents. It's complications simply just in life, right? There's a lot of complications about who we are, but being a non-resident parent is something different, something very, very different. If you're a non-resident parent, in the comments, you listen to me, just kind of type in there, yeah, I'm a non-resident parent. I don't live with my children. It's a lot of you out there. I used to be one. I still am one. I still am one. I'm married and I'm still one. I'm still a non-resident dad, right? And so it's not easy. It's not easy. You lose a lot when you're not at home with your children. I remember I came to this epiphany some time ago as it relates to my youngest daughter. Great relationship. Her mom and I, we did a phenomenal job at raising a phenomenal daughter. Did all of the things, according to the plan that we created, when she was 1.5 years old. And we decided not to be together anymore. But we made some great, great, great decisions, right? In being planners of her life and understanding that there were going to be some sacrifices with her moving back and forth, and when she became older and began to spend more time with her mom. One of the things that I missed the most, and that somewhat agonized me today to a certain extent, but I understand it. I've accepted it, and I move forward with it. But one of the things that I was understanding was Sean Dove, who's a good friend of mine. You guys know Sean. He runs the Campaign for Black Male Achievement. Told me a story one time of his son waking up in the middle of the night with a nightmare. And he said he was in his bed and he heard his son cry out for him. And he got up and he went into the room to comfort his son through his nightmare and get him back to sleep. And as he was walking back to his room, he thought to himself, wow, I wonder what that feels like to wake up in the middle of the night screaming for your dad and he actually shows up. And every time I think about that, it's kind of like, yeah, that's what you miss when you're a non-resident dad. Like when I think about my daughter, I think about, like, I don't know what she looks like getting up in the morning, standing in front of the refrigerator door with it wide open, right? I don't know what it looks like for the most part, like when she goes to bed or when she has a bad day or when she has a great day, right? Or when I don't get to see her personal, emotional, and other signals that things are going on that I can ask, are you good? Are you okay? Is there anything I can help you with? Only get what's translated between her and I, which is through her own filter. But not being in the house, I don't get to do that. Now, her mom may say that's not all it's cracked up to be, but nonetheless, as a parent, you miss that, and you want to have that. And so, along with those things, right, there's so many other things that make co-parenting complicated. And this menu is exhaustive, right? And so when you look at it, you can just get tired, because dealing with these things as a married man, they're difficult with respect to co-parenting. But when you think about being non-resident co-parents, right? Co-parenting a child, the list and menu of issues that you have to go with doesn't diminish whether you're together or not together. They're still there, right? As parents, still got to deal with them. And so as you look at this list, these are all realities of being parents. But these are also things that make co-parenting complicated. Doesn't make it impossible. It makes it complicated. And so you have to realize that you can't get through these things by the seat of your pants. You got to plan. You got to be able to kind of understand how you're going to manage all of these things as you go through. And one of the most critical things you have to be able to do is communicate, right? You got to be able to communicate with each other. And then secondly, you got to have a deep level of respect for each other. Because I think that if you can communicate and that you have a deep level of respect for each other, you can overcome any complication there is. It doesn't make it not complicated anymore, but it makes it easier to get over when you don't feel like you have to get over it by yourself and in isolation. Because these things are important as it relates to our children. And so this is, again, this list is exhaustive, right? I think that's how you say that word. But it is a list nonetheless. It's a list that you got to deal with. And you have to figure out how to maneuver. And because of that list, you got a plan. There's got to be a plan, right? And so over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to take my time and go through four things that I think is part of a checklist to be able to create a plan that's going to work for you. And this is a plan that not only works for you as co-parents, but it also works for you as parents who are married, right? Parents who are separated by distance, parents who are going through. I think that these five things are something that can help you get through these hard times and allow you to really parent under a crisis. The first thing, are you willing to talk and listen? Are you willing to talk and listen, not just talk? Are you ready to reason, right? Are you ready to talk to be understood and listen to understand? You must be able to listen to completion and with understanding. Listen, I'm one to say that it took me a long time to understand that, right? To understand being able to not allow my frustrations to block my need to get to conclusion. And so we have to be able to talk, and we have to be able to listen equally. And if you're dealing with someone that doesn't allow you to do that, then you're dealing with other issues beyond what you're trying to accomplish. And that too needs a plan, because there are reasons why two people cannot communicate with each other. One of those reasons is they just don't know how. Second reason is they just don't want to, right? And so both of those have their own sets of things that you have to do in order to get through to that individual. I think this is important. Writing down the points you want to make before you engage in a conversation so that you don't get into an argument and forget about what you wanted to talk about in the first place. Because many times that happens to us when we get into emotional conversations with people. We forget because we start arguing, right? We start debating, we start comparing, but we don't negotiate, right? Negotiation takes talking and listening, hearing and understanding, talking and being understood. It's a cycle. Communication is a cycle of what I just talked about. You say something for her to understand. She understands it. She says something that confirms that she understood. That's a cycle of communication. That's how communication takes place. And yeah, it's kind of crazy that you might have to sit in front of somebody with your phone or with a piece of paper to make sure that you make your points. But sometimes you want to do that not so much just to make your points, but you want to articulate them in a way that's clear and precise and not get caught up in the emotions of what you might be saying. So it's important to be able to write the points down you want to make, and to keep notes that you can garner clarity and ask questions, right? It's like, listen, it sounds crazy that you have to do this, but when you are talking to somebody that you can't reason with and there are other issues in front of you, you have to be able to set rules that allow you to communicate. One of those rules is we're not going to bring up old stuff in this conversation. So let's get to the work at hand, which is dealing with this particular situation. Doesn't mean that I don't want to talk about the past, because I understand that the past has influence on the nature of this very conversation. But you have to be able to departmentalize those things, right? Your brain has to be able to do that, and your will has to be able to do that. The struggle is the heart doesn't want to do it. The heart wants to resolve all of the heart issues before it gets to the hard issues. The hard issues become more complicated when those hard issues are hard issues, particularly when those hard issues are mistrust, betrayal, confusion, jealousy, right? And so, again, it's important that you are willing to talk and listen. And so these three things, I believe, get you on that track to getting to that plan. And then you have to ask yourself the question, am I committed to solving the problem? This is a critical question. I ask the fathers in our fatherhood program whenever I do the teaching a couple of questions. And one of the questions is similar to this one, where we ask them, are you committed to solving the problem? Or are you just willing to perpetuate the issue? Right? Those are two different things. Solving the problem, perpetuating this issue, right? Argument perpetuates the issue. Communication helps solve the problem. And so you have to be committed to solving the problem. The problem is we can't communicate. So the commitment has to be first to deal with the communication issue. Like, how can we get past this? What can we do to get past this so that we can communicate? Because what's at stake is important. You know, the biggest tragedy about COVID-19 right now is, although our faith encourages us to believe that this too shall pass, we don't know when. And we don't know what's going to happen in the meantime. Wouldn't it be tragic to not be able to get through an issue of communication and have something tragic happen that the two of you could not recover from? Wouldn't that be tragic? Commit yourself to solving the problem. The next thing, which is a much, much harder thing, right? We know that this is not easy. Can you agree to disagree? Can you let yourself go? Can you allow yourself to be right, but not want to win or to make a point, but to get to a conclusion that's going to get you closer to your goal? Can you agree to disagree, even when the other person is not willing to do the same? Sacrifices. We have to sacrifice for the things in life that we really want. And sometimes you have to give up things of yourself that you may not want to give up, particularly to the person that you're giving them up to. But for the sake of what you're trying to get to, sacrifice is a must. You must be able to embrace the ability to be able to sacrifice. And so one of the ways that you can get to really understanding how to agree to disagree is to talk to somebody you trust about your deal breakers, because that's where we get hung up. We get hung up in conversation and argument when we hit a deal breaker and the other person doesn't know it's a deal breaker. And then we get stubborn and we get stuck. We become that guy that you saw in the beginning at the crossroads, right? Because you don't know whether to retreat or to engage. You don't know whether to be quiet or to go off, right? You don't know which way to go. And so one of the important things to do, and one of the strategies, is to talk to somebody about your deal breakers. Let people know, like, listen, I got to have this. I'm trying to manage this situation, but there's some things I'm just not going to give up on. I'm not doing X. I'm not doing Y. I'm not doing Z. So that person can help you understand whether or not those are really deal breakers or just your ego in the way. But you got to have trusted people in your circle that can articulate situations, who've been there before, been there, done that. seasoned people, married people, people with older children who have raised their children successfully in non-resident, non-married relationships. Nobody, I don't care how much they look like on social media, that they've been married for 40 years with no hiccups and no struggles. That's a LIE. Those are the best people to talk to because they figured it out. Talk to them, inbox them. I got a marriage question. I got a relationship question. I just need some reasoning, right? And then list 3 people outside of your family who would have a vested interest in that you all succeed. And so what this means is making sure that you surround yourself with people who want to see everybody make out in this situation. Not just you, right? Because you don't want to surround yourself with people who are just going to say yes, 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 yes to you. She doesn't want to surround herself with people who just say yes, yes, yes to her, although that may seem like what's happening. Could be. But then the child is in the middle. Who's advocating for the child? The best kind of friends to have is those who look at the situation and they're champions of the relationship or they're champions of the marriage. I remember when I lived in Albany, a good friend of mine, Brenda Brooke, who is now passed away, she said to me, make sure that your relationship always has friends. And I didn't know what she meant by that until later on in life. And what she was just saying is make sure that the relationship has champions, that they want to see the marriage work, right? They don't want to see you not work. They want to see the marriage work and make happen. And I just thought that that was so profound, for me moving forward, because it was something that I began to do. I began to search for people who would circle me that would not be just my champion, but would be a champion for the lifestyle of my family. And then the next thing is, why are we not moving here? I'm with you guys. Keyboard's just not moving. There you go. Seek outside counsel. Seek outside counsel. Mediator, life coach, therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist, pastor, elder, coach, mentor, older sibling, your parents themselves. Talk to somebody who can help you walk through this situation that could get you to what it is you're trying to accomplish in life as it relates to your relationship. And then there is this. Can you settle unresolved personal emotions? Right? Because that is the holy grail in the middle of this. Need to be able to figure out how you negotiate a plan to be the best parents you can be for your child. But there's heavy dark cloud hanging over you around things that have not been dealt with. They are the dirty baggages that you bring on a trip to compromise that are left unopened and dealt with. And so when you don't deal with them, you bring those bags to the fight. And it disables you from being able to communicate, but equips you to be able to argue and debate. So how do you get past those things? Pick your battle. What are you really there for? What did we just talk about? Plan. Sometimes you might have to leave something on the field. Sometimes you might have to not get everything that you want. Sometimes you want to get some small wins so that you build up to the bigger ones. The relationship, for the most part, didn't tear down in a day. You're not going to build it back up in 15 minutes. And so you got to pick your battles. What are you really arguing about? And then assess the situation, right? Because we talked about this last week. Is what you're asking for something that you have the ability to do, right? Or are you just arguing just for arguing's sake? Have you thought about that? Dads, I'm talking to you because the majority of who I'm talking to are you. There's some moms out there in the same situation, but majority of them are dads. What if she said, here, take the kids for the next 3 months? Realistically, think about it. Would you be equipped to do it without her help? Without her help. Now, I know a lot of guys say, yeah, I love the opportunity, but wanting the opportunity is different from knowing that you can accomplish the task. Take into consideration the list that I showed you earlier. Having them full-time in your house, is it the same as being a weekend dad or Disney dad, right? For a couple of hours. It's a different level of responsibility, and I'm sure many of you know it, but most of you don't realize it, and you don't respond like you're realizing it. And so list and prioritize your ask. Part of picking your battle is being able to say to yourself, yeah, I want some of this, but I don't want all of this. I can not do this, but I can do that, right? Prioritize what you're asking for. Everything on the list is not level and important. Some things are just simply not important. So why put them on the list if they're not important? Right? And the same thing, even when you combine your list together, make sure that you're listing and prioritizing the list that you're asking and that you're dealing with and that you're talking about. And then craft a scenario to which neither of you are the villain. Because we're quick to want to make the other person the villain. It's the narrative that we want to walk away and tell our friends. And it does nothing but bring more pain into the situation, more animosity, more anger, more hatred, more mistrust. One of the things I do, and I tell my guys this, and they chuckle every time I've told them this. I said that when somebody comes to me and says, Kenny, so-and-so said so-and-so about you, right? We all have those people in our lives. If you have those people in your lives, just say, yeah, I know that person, Kenny. The person that wants to bring you something and everything else they hear about you, they bring it to you. They bring it to your space as a friend. They just want you to know that people out there are talking about you, right? My response to that person every time that happens is, so what did you say? So what did you say when they said that about me? Or did you just take the information, left it true to just bring it back to me? Because doing that does me no favor. Advocating for me when I'm here is less important to me than advocating for me when I'm not there. But we don't want to be the villain. We want to make somebody else the villain. In our relationships, the narrative is always she's such and such or he's such and such, because somebody's got to be the villain. And as long as there's a villain in the story, a happy ending will never come as it relates to co-parenting. Listen, I'm saying all this, and also keep in mind that I am very clear about when safety is at risk. When safety is at risk, I'm having a whole nother conversation. But we're not talking about that. We're not talking about issues where safety is an issue. When safety is an issue, maintain yourself to be safe. I don't care what the situation is. Now, there's some other things that you got to do around that too, because you just can't say he's not safe. And that's not true. Right? And so, but we got to be able to settle unresolved personal emotions. And so that's a checklist, guys. That is a checklist, to be able to manage and plan to win in co-parenting, to ask yourself, are you willing to talk and to listen, right? Are you committed to solving the problem? Have you put your whole self into, I'm going to do this as long as it takes until it gets itself right? Trust me, it can happen, but you got to commit to it. Even though, mother of my youngest daughter, we struggled in the beginning in communication and actually just being friends. We were good at committing to being co-parents. We never struggled with that. But we struggled with being friends, right? We struggled with being cordial to each other. And over time, as we began to trust each other more and more, right? And I began to understand that she had my best interest at heart, and she understood that I had her best interest at heart. And at the end of the day, the only thing that was important to us was raising this little girl and not having her be in full view of any of the issues that we may have been struggling with behind the scenes. One day after some time, that no longer existed. I can't tell you when. I can't tell you how long. I just know that at some point, she became my friend. And then she became my best friend. Right? And she continues to be one of my best friends. But you got to have a respect for someone to get there. You just don't just get there, right? And then you got to be able to agree to disagree. You got to be able to not want to carry the fight to death. You got to not want to see blood shed, tears shed, stress, anxiety, anger, hatefulness, venom. You got to not want to see some of those things just for the sake of being right. Now, you don't always want to be wrong either. I ain't trying to tell you to do that. Nobody wants to be wrong all the time. But you just got to know when to pick your battles. You got to know when to say when, right? And then can you settle unresolved personal issues? That's important, to not leave those suitcases unopened, but find the right time to be able to deal with them with mediation, if necessary, to be able to walk your way through your personal issues so that those things don't impact what it is you're trying to do with your children. And so we end up here again, just like at the crossroads. And we're trying to figure out what it is we need to do. And then there is this. A straight line is an illusion of a man who believes that he'll never have to make another choice. Now tweet that. And that's mine too. That's mine. I didn't snatch that off of Facebook or nothing. That's mine. A straight line is an illusion that makes a man believe that he'll never have to make another choice. You're always going to have to make choices. You're always going to have to make decisions. Our lives are sum total of the quality of decisions that we make in life. You can gauge one's life based on the decisions that they make, the ability to be able to do all the things that I just talked about in every aspect of their lives. Being able to understand that choices are real, decisions are real, and that you will have to leave your sword on the field sometimes. You might have to walk away sometimes a little wounded, right? Give yourself the time to heal. Work on being healed, but work on all of that for the common goal. And that is to make sure that the two of you are the best parents you can be in the lives of your children. So I hope that helped. I hope this blessed somebody out there. I'm going to be as honest as I possibly can. I'm not sure how this is being received, out there in the space, but I am going to pray, that this touched somebody, that there's something in here. And you know what? Share it far and wide. If there's some people that you know that need to hear this, people that you know that are struggling right now in relationships and they're not really figuring out how to do this thing, share this with them with a note, with a note, and tell them why it's important that you think they should listen to this. And after they watch it, have them call you back and talk about the things that really resonated with them. And if you could share some of those things with me at some point, right? Again, if you want to see this tonight, you know it's on this page. If you want to see the other two that I did in the last couple of weeks, make sure that you go to www.gentlewarriorsacademy.com. That is where we're building this treasure chest of information and resources for parents, for dads and for moms and for grandparents to be able to kind of walk through this journey we call parenting. And I want to make sure that you are successful in doing that. There is a resource that we have that I believe will help you on our Fathers Incorporated website. It is called Dark Hearts. That video that you saw in the beginning was a trailer for our short film Dark Hearts to talk about the challenges in co-parenting. In a few weeks, I'm actually going to show that live. I'm waiting to get direct internet into my computer here in the office so that when it runs, I know it doesn't hang up. And so as soon as that happens, I'm going to do a live showing of that film. It's only 20 minutes. And then I want to have a discussion about what you guys have seen in the film. But this is a workbook, an ebook that we created that goes along with the film that gets a little deeper into what I've talked about over the 3 weeks, and some exercises and some things that you can do to ensure that you find common ground when you're trying to communicate with the mother of your children. And then lastly, right, next week, we continue to move on. So we start a new series next week, a 6-week series next week we start, called Being Parents in a Christian Way. And so it has been on my heart to do something specifically for Christian parents, both married and unmarried, resident and non-resident, liking each other and not liking each other, but all are covered under the covenant of the word. And so what does the Bible say about being great parents? And I am so excited about this one here. And so it's going to take me 6 weeks to get through all of it. But what we're going to be talking about next Wednesday, same time, same place, is parenting through faith and patience, right? We want to make sure that you understand as Christians how the Bible will help you in ensuring, and anyone else too. You don't have to be, we would love for you to be a believer. I would love for you to be a believer. But if you're not a believer, the principles that I'm going to be talking about works for everybody. They work for you. They'll work for anybody else. But if you're adverse to hearing me talk about God and hearing me talk about my belief, you're probably not going to want to listen to me. But I would encourage that you do. I would encourage that you listen to this. Again, the series is going to be called Being Parents in a Christian Way. The first part next Wednesday, April 15th at 7 o'clock, is going to be parenting through faith and patience. And we'll be moving this out through our social media platforms throughout the throughout the rest of the week. Listen, it's been a pleasure. It is 7:59 and I am up on being out of here. And so thank you. I love you all so much. For those of you who listen to me tonight, who will listen to me later, please share this again in the comments. Let me know how I did. Let me know what resonated with you. Some other things that you would like for me to talk about and move yourself through these spaces. I would just love to kind of really hear from you as it relates to that. And so I could end like I used to end my radio shows, right? Always be kind to others as you're kind to yourself, or you might find yourself by yourself. Always shoot high for your goals, because even if you miss, you'll be amongst the stars. And as my good friend Art Mitchell used to always say, it's much more important to be nice than it is to be important. Till next Wednesday, be safe out there. God bless. See you soon.